Hi everyone, I've been meaning to make a tutorial about 2D arrays and file writing for quite some time now. And a teacher recently posted up on the ICT and Computing Teachers page, I think it was Kath Hedges, with this curious project which was making a mobile phone contract kind of system or record system which would record different mobile phone contracts. And I thought, well, one way of doing this would be using a 2D array. Another way of doing it would be by making a database in SQL, but I think that'll be another video. So here's a video on 2D arrays and file writing. Um, we'll come to these modules that we've imported later on, but let's just get started. I've put my whole program in a main loop, and we'll call at the bottom here for now. What we've said so far is we have a contract selector procedure, which says how many months do we want in a contract. I think that's quite standard in a mobile phone contract. If the person says 12 months, then we set the price as $29.99 a month. Otherwise, if it's 24 months, then $19.99. Otherwise, if it's 36 months, it's $9.99. And we're not adding in the currency sign here because we can concatenate that in later. If they don't write that, then what we can do is we can recall contract selector. So we've called main, and within main, let's call contract selector first. And we'll come to all this other code in a moment because that's going to help us with our sorting later on. Okay, so at the moment it says how many months is the contract. Let's say we say 12, and then it starts asking our client's first name. Interestingly, I think what we should be able to do is we should be able to just print price and see what the price was. It's not global, of course, because we're inside this procedure. So maybe we should print the price here just to test that this has worked. Print price. This contract is, and we'll concatenate in price. This is for us to test our code. 12 months. And it says the price of this contract is $29.99. What is the client's first name? You could obviously add in other confirmations, like do you want to continue? But for now, I'll just go through the program. So it will ask for the client's first name and their last name. But also what I want to do is I want to calculate the contract length. So what I've done here is I've imported from the datetime module a class which is confusingly also called datetime, and it has this method called now. What that does, when we do datetime.now, it actually gives us the current date. So you can test this out in the interpreter. If we import datetime and then we do datetime.now, you'll see that it gives us 2018. It's the 15th of December, and it is 9:19 and 26 seconds. I believe these are the milliseconds as well. So we're going to use that first of all to calculate what the current date is. What we also need to do then is we need to work out, well, when does the contract end? Because I think that's something that we want to write to our file. So what I've done then is based on 12 months, if it was 12, we div, so we do integer division by 12, that gives us 1 times 52, and that gives us the number of weeks. Why that is important then is because if we want to add, say, a year onto our contract, and the way that we do that is by using this method called time delta. And time delta takes several arguments. I'm not going to try and pretend that I know all these methods and functions off by heart. I've been looking these up myself. And what I learned was that time delta can have, the arguments days, seconds, microseconds. Unfortunately, there's not one called months or years, so we have to go by the weeks. And we know there's 52 weeks in a year. So here we're just saying plus a time delta of this number of weeks stored here. we could also print out the end date, I guess. So we could print out the start date and end date just to show you what that shows. Okay, so let's say how many months the contract, 24 months, and you'll see that this is the start date and this is the end date in 2020, so it's exactly 2 years later. Then it asks for the name. So we can start writing all of this into our file now. So we're going to take first name, we're going to take last name, um, and then let's say we're going to actually start writing that to an array, um, and then we can write that to a file. So first of all, in Python, we don't have arrays, we have lists. So this should really be about 2D lists. Let's create our 2D list and we'll call this um, customer to write equals, and we'll just make an empty list. And we're going to append to that all of our fields. So what I want to append then is I'm going to append the first name, the last name. Oh, wait, I can't do that because it only takes one argument. So I'm just going to have to copy and paste this several times. So first name, I'm going to paste the last name, and also what do we want? We want the probably the start date. And do we want the start date and end date? Yeah, we might as well append the start date, end date, and also the price. So let's have in here start date. We'll have end date, and we'll also have the price. Whoa, lowercase, I think. And let's just see what that looks like for now. Turning this, yeah, let's just comment this stuff out for now. Triple quote that, triple quote this, so we'll comment that out. And we're going to print customer to write, just so you can see what we've done so far. We've made a list, and we're adding in first name, last name, start date, end date, and the price to that list. Have a look. So yeah, that's within the main loop. What we're calling contract selector. Oh, okay, how many months is the contract? Let's say it's 12 months. The price can be $29.99. We're still printing these out as tests. The first name, let's just go with James, and the last name, let's go with Lee. So here what we've got is here's the array. It's got James Lee, and then the third item in the array is actually an object of date time, and it's got the current start date. Then you've also got the end date, and then you've got the price. Notice that in lists in Python, you can actually store strings, objects, integers, floats, all in the one array, which is great. I mean, all in one list, because you can't do that in standard arrays. But this is going to be the starting point. That's one customer. So how do we get several customers? Well, if we want several customers, we're actually going to have to write this to a file, and we're going to have to keep appending to that file. So I've got my file saved in this folder called 2D Writing, 2D Array Tutorials. So I'm going to make a new text document here, and I'm going to call this customers. It will automatically be .txt. The file extension is hidden, but if yours are not hidden, then you'll need to put in the txt. And I'll explain why we need to do this later, but effectively we're just going to start by having an empty array in that customer's text file, because effectively, or an empty list, we're going to append our list into here, so that will be our 2D list. Let's save that. So we've got a list, and now what we need to do is we need to write this list, customer to write, into our file, but append it to the list. So should we make another procedure? Probably that would be a good idea. So let's call this def file write. We're just going to file right now. In order to do that, we're going to need to open our file first, load the contents, load the list, and append to it. So let's open our file. So let's say file equals open, um, and then the name of the file is called, what did we say it was? Was it customers? Yeah, customers.txt. We're going to open it in read mode because we're just reading in the contents. And then we're going to say that the temporary array or temporary list is equal to the contents of the file. And we're going to use the eval function here. So we're going to evaluate the contents of the file by doing file.read. So we're going to read the whole file and evaluate it. Python will evaluate those two square brackets in our customers file and automatically know that it's a list. We'll close our file. And then what I need to do is I need to append this to our temp list. Now the problem is that the scope of customer to write is actually local only to this procedure. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to pass this into here. So rather than printing customer to write, we're going to return it. Yeah. So in here, whenever we call file write, which we're going to do later here, file write, we're going to pass in customer to write because we call this function here, and this function returns the list. So that list is returned, and we're going to pass that customer to write into our file write. So we'll pass it in here, call it customer to write. And now we can append to it because that list has been passed into this function. So we can now go customer to write. Actually, it's going to be temp list dot append, and we're going to append in our new customer effectively. Yeah. After we've done that, so we've appended in to our temp list our customer to write. We could print it just so you can see what is going on. And we're going to write it to our file. So we now need to open our file again. So let's go file equals open. File is essentially the name of our file. You could call it whatever you wanted. File is probably not a very descriptive word or variable name. I'll just call it file. You could call it customer, I suppose. So you could say customer equals open. That makes it a bit more meaningful. Customers.txt, and this time we're going to open our file in write mode, and what that will do is it will effectively delete the contents of the file straight away, so we better get this right, and then we're going to write into there, so we're going to go to customer.write, because you can read or write. Yeah, we're going to write, and this time we're going to cast to a string of temp list. Okay, and then we'll do customer.close. That should be enough for now. I'm waking up in 9 hours. Fortunately, it's a Saturday, so I won't be waking up at 6:30 unless our daughter wakes us up at that time. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, 12-month contract. Let's just choose a different name. So we'll choose kitten, tell. Right, customer to write is not defined. So we're doing file write, customer to write. That's interesting. So we want to call. Okay. So what's happened here is we've returned customer to write, but we haven't actually stored it anywhere. So let's store it in a variable called customer details, and we'll say customer details equals contract selector. So when this is returned, it's returned into this variable or this list called customer details, and then we pass it in there as customer details. And here we can call this customer details as well. Okay, here we've got customer details, temp list equals eval that. We're going to append customer details here, print our temp list just in case so we know what's in there. Let's run it again. Let's see. Okay, how many months is a contract? 12 months. We'll just take that out. What's client's name? Hitton. What's the surname? Patel. Okay, so it appears that our array has now become a 2D array because we've now got Hitton Patel in there with all his details in there. And what should happen is if I open my customers file, we should see it's no longer the single pair of square brackets for a list. It's now a 2D list. Apologies for using the term list and array interchangeably. They're different because a list can accept multiple data types and even objects, whereas an array has to take the same data type, one single data type only. So technically, it's a 2D list. Okay, well, let's see if this works. Let's just run it again. We can run it again, I think, just by calling main here. How many months is the contract? Let's do a 24-month contract. What's the client's first name? We'll put Louise and last name Curran. Wow. Okay. So this hasn't worked because we've just recalled main without actually importing those modules. So all right, let's just run it again here. The shortcut won't work because we did our imports outside of the main function. Wonder whether we should have done that or not. I think it's okay to do that. We'll see. Right. Let's try it again. 24 months. What is the client's first name? Louise. Surname? Curran. Okay. Just have a look at this. Date time has no attribute. Date time. Interesting. Okay. So this is happening because we're now importing in our file and it's seeing that this is a date time object and it can't evaluate that. Wow, okay. So perhaps what we should be storing in the first point shouldn't be an object. It should be a string. This is going to cause us some issues. So going back to here then, I hadn't really anticipated this, but rather than writing in the start date, maybe we need to append in this as a string format. Luckily, this is something that I think I've researched, and I think that the way that we do that is rather than appending in the start date as an object, we're going to append it in as a string. So we're going to do string format time, and we're going to format the time. And the only thing I'm really concerned about isn't like the exact time in seconds and milliseconds. I just want to know the day followed by the month, which is actually percent %B, followed by the year. And then likewise, I want to do the same when I'm writing the end date. I want to do that as well. Okay, What I'm also going to have to do then is I'm going to have to go to my file here and just clear that array because there was an error in there. And we'll start again, we'll clear our list and we'll start again here. But yeah, I never anticipated that. But it's good because we're coding as we're going along and there might be mistakes and that's how we're problem solving effectively. So let's try this. Okay, so when we format our date, we have to format it using string format. And I'll talk to you about like where I got this from in a moment because definitely didn't just learn it off by heart. So 12 months, let's just put Hitton back in there, Patel, and you'll see now, can you see how it's added in today's date as a string and then the expiry date also as a string as well. So I think that's pretty cool. That we can format like that. Where did I get that from? Well, I was looking at quite a few tutorials, and over here you'll see that this was the time delta, and I think getting the current date and time. Yeah, so I learned from here that actually you can string format the time by year, month, um, and day as such, hours and minutes. And also on this website here as well, Geeks for Geeks is pretty decent. I don't understand why actually month is written as B. I suppose that's a month in text, whereas if we used a M, we'd get the month in numbers instead. And that might actually be more useful because later on we might want to do some sorting by month. And it'll be easier to work with an integer than it will to work with a date. So let's have a look at that. Let's just clear it again. So at the moment it says 15 dec 18. Maybe we want those as numbers. So let's just delete that and run it again. So we'll run this and how many months? 12 months. Client's name, kitten. That's my daughter. Patel. Okay, so now it does actually do. So if you want the month displayed as a word, then you need to use B in the string formatting. Otherwise, we use M. And this, I believe, should now work. So we should be able to add in extra users now, and our 2D array should just keep growing. How many months is a contract? 24 months. What is the client? So you can see that the dates coming up here. What is the client's first name? Let's go with Louise again. Aaron. And here you'll see that it starts 1512 and then finishes, interestingly, 12, 12, 20. Now, why is that not doing what we expect it to do? Because this is today's date, but this is not 2 years from now, is it? Because something strange has gone on there. Well, I suppose what we could do, instead of doing it by weeks, we could do days instead. So whatever they put in as months, we can just, if they say 12 months, it's going to be 365. So we'll do that whole number, so integer division by 12, and we'll times that by 365 up to days and see if that makes a difference. Okay, so how many months is the contract? Let's just go for 24 again. And we'll put in another client's name, so James Blooming. And is this 24 months? Yeah, so now it's accurate. So it gives us 24 months later. So yeah, interesting that if we go by days rather than by weeks, it's more accurate. And you can see this 2D array is growing. So now we've got Hitton, Louise, and James in here, the price of their contracts. And when we look at the 2D array, you can see that it's also growing as well. Let's just add in one more customer so that I can show you a bit of sorting on this as well. So how many months is a contract now? Let's go for 36 months to say that we've tested all all of the possibilities. The person's first name is going to be Jared, and the last name is going to be Watts. And yeah, let's put that in fine. So we've got our 2D array. Now what we need to do then is we've got contract selector, we've got file writer. It might be a good idea to be able to output all contracts that I guess in order. Would that be useful? Or just outputting all the contracts on new lines to start with, and then we can talk about sorting maybe in another video because this has got quite lengthy already, right? Yeah, so let's just talk about def. Let's say file reader, file read. And what are we going to take in here? So we don't need to take any arguments, I don't think, because all we're doing is we're just opening the file and then outputting it line by line. So let's do customer out. So this is just what we're going to call our file. Customer out equals open. We're going to open our customers.txt in read mode, and we're going to essentially print them all out. So we'll say we'll make it. I like to call it a temporary list, but yeah, let's just call it customer list equals eval. So we're going to evaluate the file, which is actually now a 2D array, and then we can print out all of the lines. So what we can do, that 2D array is called customer list. It's taken in from the file, customers file, and we can just say count in range the len of customer list. This is just printing each line out one at a time, each customer at a time. We can just say print customer list count as our index. Yeah, so for the length of customer list, so for all the customers, print them out on a new line, and we'll just see what that actually looks like here. Oh, I just remembered we haven't called it. So after file writing, we can do file read as well. There. You can call these whenever you want, I suppose. You could have a menu system. I talk about that in one of my other videos. So how many months the contract? Oh, so it's asking us to add another person. All right, let's add another person then. Yeah, let's just make an error. Let's just say 0 months. Oh, error, good. How many months is the contract? Let's go 36. What's the client's name? We'll have Chris. Last name Speller. Whoa, okay. Error. Price is referenced before the assignment. The price for this customer. Interesting. So in contract selector, when we enter an error and it loops back, so we looped back to here and it ran this. Then it told us what the price was. Let's just set price as a default value here, so nothing to start with. Let's just try that. Let's make an error, 0, and then we'll try 24. That seemed to work this time because we initialized it first. Chris, surname Speller. Yeah, why is it doing that? Why is it looping? So that was the error. Then it called itself. I think it's because you shouldn't actually call it yourself. You should return instead, because then it terminates the current procedure and starts it again. Let's just try that. So here we're just doing some testing, I suppose. Length of contract, make an error. Okay, there's the error. Let's go 36 months now. Good. 9.99. Chris Speller. Customer list. Oh yeah, it's not file.read, is it? So here we've managed to get all the way down to here and we're reading our file, but it's not file.read. I just copy and paste that from above, didn't I? Our file is called customer out. It's customer out.read. Look, 12-month contract. We're just essentially making lots of new records, I suppose. Client's first name, let's put Lloyd, and then surname Stevens. We're closing a file, and the file is not called file, it's called customer out. It's late, it's 9:46, isn't it? So apologize for my sloppy programming. What's the client's first name? James Brown. Okay, cool. So this was the 2D list in the file, and this is us printing it out, all a record at a time. So what can we do with that? Well, number one, how about we don't print out our 2D array because that is confusing us at the moment. But perhaps you want it to be formatted in a neater way. So where are we? Sorry. Yeah, I mean, you've got like a few options here. Perhaps you want it sorted alphabetically. And we weren't going to sort it by date. I'm going to let you research that yourself. But we can go into sorting, say, alphabetically for now. I suppose we could go by date. It's going to be a tricky algorithm, isn't it? Let's just go by sorting by the surname. So if we want to sort all our customers by surname, we'll talk through that. That is something that I was researching myself because it's something that's often asked, and yeah, I think there's a few ways of doing it. You can use the sort function, which will sort your list, but it'll sort it in place, which means it'll permanently sorted. Or what we can do is we can use the sorted function, and that takes various arguments, and that is where our final, I suppose, class called, or yeah, a final class called item getter comes into it. So we have this operator called item getter, and there's two different ways of sorting, which are non-destructive. One is using anonymous functions called lambda, which I don't generally go into at GCSE, but I thought I'd show you anyway. And the other way of doing this is by using item getter, which is a bit friendlier. So let's have a look at those two. So this would be to print out just the whole customer list. But what happens if I don't want to print it out in order? Then I suppose I could sort it, couldn't I? So what we could do is we could say name sort, and we'll use a sorted function, and we're going to sort our customer list. And if we're using these anonymous functions called lambda, we can make this anonymous function called name, and it'll only exist here. And we can say we're going to sort by, we could go by surname. So 0 would be the first name, 1 would be the surname, 2 would be the start date, although it's given as a string, so that's going to cause us a few difficulties. It's going to complexity. This is going to be 3, and this is going to be 4. So we could sort by price. So 0, 1. Let's just sort by 1 to start with. So that is going to sort all our customers by surname. We could also try sorting them by price instead. So if we're going to do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is like two different methods of sorting. So if you want to use item getter, you just pass in as an argument the number of the column, and we're sorting customer list. And in here, we can state on both cases whether we want it from largest to smallest or not. So reverse equals true. I believe it will put the highest prices at the top. And let's just print those out as well. So we could then print these out using a for loop. Count in range, len, customer list, print, name sort. We're going to print out name sort and by counter, just call this counter because we don't really want to call our variable names the same things. And then you can do the same again. We're just demoing the different ways of sorting our list here. So for counter and range, name sort 2, not a great name, but it's just a different demo, I suppose. Name sort 2, names for names in there. And we'll call it names as well. Okay, let's have a run of this. And once again, we're going to add another customer because that just calls by default. How many months is a contract? So let's go for 24. What is the client's first name? Let's go for Z. What's the client's surname? Chan Lao. Wow. Okay. So we've printed out several times and we should have added a line break. But hopefully what you can see here is this is the first time it's printed out, just as it is in the file. This is all of our records printed out in alphabetical order by surname. Yeah. And then this last time we printed it out was print out all the records, and this one was using lambda, this one was using item getter, and we're printing them sorted by price. So that is essentially a quick intro, well not even a quick intro, a lengthy video on how we might use 2D arrays to store our data persistently so that we've got a permanent record that we can use whenever. What we've also shown is how we might output all of those records, alphabetically using lambda functions, and also how we might output them alphabetically using item getter, which we also need to import. I think that's about it. I thought about also doing a 2D array version as well, so a nested for loop if we want to print out all of the items next to each other with padding. But I think, yeah, because some people don't like the fact that these are printed out like this and they prefer it to be a bit neater, in which case what you would do is you would print out, let me just comment these lines out. I think it's Alt-3. I thought I'd talk about that as well, how we use a nested for loop. So rather than just printing out each customer's entire record, what we could do is we could then also print out each of their details individually. So we could say for details in range, now here we need to do the length of the actual customer list 0. So we're saying for the first item in the customer list, however long that is, double bracket, can we now print out each item next to each other? You can. What we're going to do is we're going to say print customer list count details. And this time I don't really want to add a new customer or file right. I just want to show you how you might print out customer details in a nicer format than this here. Let's just run it. Okay, that's not what I wanted because each um, customer now has a line break on the end of it, which gives us a perfect way of incorporating the end feature. So what we can say is that usually the end on a print statement is /n as such. But essentially, if you just say the end is going to be instead a space, then hopefully what it should do is it should just put spaces in between each one instead. Huh, good. That's put space in between each one. And then what we want to do is at the end of each record, I'm going to also put in a /n. So that means each record should be on a new line. I can't do that? Okay. Yeah, of course I can't. Let's just print a new line like this then instead. So after we've done that, so for each loop, once we've printed out all the customer details, let's just print out a empty line or a line break. Lovely. So that might be a much better way of outputting our details. We could get into padding so that it looks professional. Yeah, why not do that? I mean, how long is this video at the moment? 41 minutes. Wow. Okay. So yeah, we might as well go into padding. It's already a long video, so we might as well. Even my daughter's complaining. She's in the sling in front of me. So uh, let's just talk about padding. Uh, so that it's neater. Okay, so rather than just printing the customer list with the details, what we could also do is we could also add in some padding so that all of our names appear in a neat format. So we could also print in padding. You're probably wondering, well, what is padding? Well, padding is what we add in so that all the names will line up. And the padding is going to vary depending on which field we are in. So, why did I decide to do this? Okay, so if we say if details equals 0, so if it's their first name, we can say the padding is going to be equal to let's say the first name is going to be 12 characters long. So the padding is going to be the length of the person's name, so the length of details. If details equals 0, yeah. So the length of customer list count details. And it's going to be 12 minus that. So that's going to give us an integer. And then we can say the padding is going to be equal to that number of spaces. So it's going to be padding times empty characters. Yeah. So that's going to add in those number of empty characters. Let's just see if this works. So what I should find is that provided first names are less than 12 characters, all the surnames should now line up. No. If details equals 0, padding equals 10, 12, close bracket for len. Okay. 12 times that. Okay, yeah, so it's an integer. So I want to add in, that is the number that I want, and then we can say padding is equal to the number times by this, I think, and then we can just add in our padding. Float and a string. Is it actually a float? So we've got the len of customer details. How are we going to generate? My brain's a bit dead at this time. Let's say, for example, the name is, I don't know, Jack, 4 letters. How are we going to generate 8 spaces? I'd quite like not to use a for loop, like another for loop, because that would complicate things. I'm going to load up one of my old programs because we could do a for loop, but I'm sure there's another way of doing it. And I've done it previously. So here's like one of my previous programs that I made. Yeah, padding. Oh, yeah, sure. So padding is just a empty string, and we times that. Okay, cool. So yeah, pad. Let's just say pad is just an empty string. So let's just do that there. Pad is equal to space. And padding is equal to that number times by this. So then we can just put that in there, I think. Oh my goodness, I'm just going to have to read my code again. So we have that, we times by this. Times by 12 minus the length of that. I'm going to put my code side by side. Sleep deprivation is not much fun. And this is like why we do so many projects, because we can reuse our code. So I've said our pad is that, and we're adding in our pad times by that. I think that's right. I mean, that worked for one, but and then it stopped working. You know what? Why is this not working? Did I put commas on each one? Oh, I did. Kind of like done this complete hack where I'm concatenating on each line. So the code's a bit less beautiful, but yeah, so I'm actually printing each record out manually, which isn't a beautiful thing to do, but I suppose. So we're effectively doing that. And then we took out our end even. And we're saying count 0. So we're just printing out each row at a time, which I don't think is as neat, but Oh well, that seems like the only way of doing it. So we're printing out that and we're concatenating all of the other fields afterwards. Yeah, it's not a pretty thing to do, but essentially what we're doing is for counting around customer list. So for the first name, we're doing that. This is count details plus printing out the surname or the first name plus that amount of padding, and then we're printing out the first name plus the same amount of padding. I mean, at this stage, you should probably just run your code to test that it works. Oh my goodness, what a nightmare. So we're doing 1, yeah. And that is essentially what we're doing. We're reading in the customer list, going through each customer, and we're saying for details in range, the len of the customer list, which is right, print out each customer 0 element plus some padding, one, two. Just feel as though the number of brackets here is getting ridiculous. All right, okay, that kind of worked, did something strange. Let's just take our new line out. Um, oh yeah, of course. We're printing out the 0th element, then we print out the first element. But I don't want to print, I just want to carry on. It's really strange. Let's solve this problem. We print out the 0th element, and then next to that, I want the first element. There we go. But why is it? So we can see that the padding has kind of worked in that our names are all aligned now, but it's just doing it multiple times. It's essentially doing it 6 times. Maybe I didn't need that. I could have gotten away with a single for loop maybe. So for each customer, I kind of overcomplicated it. He says, print out the first name and then the surname. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so it's a bit of a hack, but effectively what we're doing is we are concatenating in all of the details. And I have a feeling there's a better way of doing this, because anytime that you've got the repeated statements, you know that a loop is going to be better. And we'll go through that in a moment. Let's have a look at that. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's it. And we'll close the bracket. So we're concatenating in an align continuation character there. Now, count 1. Is there no fourth element? Maybe not. I'm not even reading the error messages right now. That's a bit of an error, isn't it? Okay, cool. All right, okay, so that works. Our padding looks kind of good in that our table's looking a lot better. However, custom list for... yeah, okay. It's because what's happening here then is our last thing is a float, because it's the price, and it's trying to literally add the price when you want to cast it to a string first. Another bracket. Wow, okay. 4. Let's have a look. Run. I'm casting as a string. No, we haven't done this. Backslash. We'll make this a string, please. Plus our padding. We probably don't need to cast that as a string. What? Not enough brackets. Mr. Lau's just guessing the number of brackets at this stage. String, customer count float has no len. But that's because customer list count 4 needs to also be a string. So the len of the string of this is what happens when you're working with floats and different data types. Right. Although bizarrely, 0, 1, 2, 3. Where is my fourth element? Oh, yeah. Weird. So we've printed out 1, 2, 3, and 4. Why is that only done 4 things? 0, 1, 2, 3. Where is our price? Our print statement has ended here, that's why. Oh, okay. Open bracket. That's a closed bracket on there. We're concatenating in a string of customer list plus, we don't need a bracket there, padding times 12 minus the length of the string. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3 brackets. That's correct. String. Customer count 4. So this belongs to here. That bracket belongs to len. Last bracket belongs to 12. Another bracket to close our print. Goodness me, the amount of time that took. How long did that take? Oh, about 15 minutes. It's okay. So that has now got our 2D array printed out in a fairly presentable format. And we've just taken this kind of like block of 12 spaces as the default. Should we make it more efficient? I just kind of feel as though, like, for the sake of um, the tutorial, you kind of should. Um, with another for loop, because at the moment we're just doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and ideally what you should be doing is you should be nesting the for loop, because you've got a repetition there. So let's do it. I mean, this tutorial is really long anyway, so len, let's go to what we're doing, the details. So for details in range, len of customer list 0. So we're saying for the length of a customer's record, which is effectively 0 to 4, I want to make sure that we're essentially concatenating each of these things correctly using the loop, because here we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So really we should be able to do this in a loop. So we should here be able to just replace that with details, I think. And none of this, although I should probably cast this as string, otherwise we're going to have those crazy issues later on, aren't we? So a string of, he says he's going to have to make this a bit smaller because we've written this ridiculous line of code. All right, okay, so we're going to print out the customer details with the padding, and yeah, see what this does. Could just have destroyed all my work. I think that's going to print them all on a separate line, but then if we do end equals space, it should concatenate the lot. We've got a len and a range, so we're going to run that. Not enough brackets, open bracket, 1, 2, 3, it's weird, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Hit and Patel, okay, that's fine. And then it's got to there where it says we're not a string. Thanks for that. All right. Print customer list count details plus pad times 10, but we are a string. We've said. Oh, this one. So I need to make this a string as well, I suppose. Okay, lovely. And then all we need to do now is add that into end equals speech mark, and that should put them all on the same line. Oh my goodness. At the end of each row, we need a new space. Why is that? So for count in range, oh, customer list, details in range, length of customer list, we're going to print out our details with our padding, and then at the end of each one, we are going to print out a new line. But I want, okay, yeah, here, This should solve it, he says. Why not? An hour later. Beautiful. So we've now printed out our 2D array with padding in a somewhat, I mean, you could call it an iterative development process, uh, whilst nursing a young child at 10 p.m. But effectively, we've got rid of a load of code, and we've got this like beautiful nested if statement, nested for loop here as well. I'm not going to go into like how we're going to sort that because the code's there anyway. I'll also put this on the GitHub so you can have a look at that in due time. I hope that's been informative. I know it's like far too long. It's over an hour long, but it goes into detail. It talks about the program. Hopefully, Kath Hedges and other teachers and students will find this useful. And I think it's time for the little one to have a feed. So have a good evening.